We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Mike Renner back in studio here in the Cincinnati offices. Gotta love Queen City this time of year. The weather just chef's kiss, like very comparable to San Diego, LA. It's some of my favorite weather. But I had to.
It has been really nice fall though. Weather.
It has. I mean, you'll look ahead to the weekend. It's like, oh, only 50s. Can't wait.
That's
Stoked.
it's felt like football season, all of football season.
Yes,
which is great.
I have to bring this up, man. You have a girlfriend now.
I do.
You have a girlfriend. Mike Renner, the
sure.
entire city of Cincinnati, at least half of it, all the females, shed a single tear today because Mike Renner, the former Bachelorette contestant, now has a girlfriend, and it's going well.
Well, I mean, I would hope so. I just get a girlfriend.
You're in the honeymoon phase.
Poorly, that would be pretty rough start, but now it's going well. Yeah.
Good for you, man.
I know.
Absolutely good for you. Well, I have, for podcast listeners, something else really exciting. We are going to introduce the man behind the mics. The man behind the audio experience that is the podcast. His name is Mike.
Yeah.
It's producer Mike Quinn. Quinn, we are going to start bringing you on the podcast more and more, and you're going to just add some flavor, some much needed personality to this podcast because we don't have enough of it.
Me. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if like bringing me on the pod is going to like up the energy level or like be super exciting because I'm a pretty laid back guy, monotone guy, as you can tell by my voice. But I mean, I'll give it a go.
I think we don't need any more energy. Austin brings enough energy. I think that's a good balance.
Yeah, you balance this out. Okay. And I was gonna ask Renner a highlight from the weekend before we get into things, but I'm gonna ask you instead. Give me a highlight from your weekend. Yeah,
so we were talking about this before the pod, and I didn't really want to bring it up, but you're like, you should tell, because it's topical. I accidentally got pretty bombed watching the Bengals game yesterday. Which if anybody else watched the Bengals game yesterday, they probably were in the same boat, but. It kind of works for this pod because like it's a draft podcast. And if you're a fan of a perennially bad team, like I am, sometimes you get bombed and you got to keep an eye on the draft. So like it works out. That's why I like this podcast, because now I'm like always up on like, oh, it's, we're halfway through the season, but like the Bengals are out of it. They've been out of it. So like now like I know who I should be watching. I know who I should be keeping an eye on moving forward, because it's not a good season.
That did seem like an easy accident to make, given that game yesterday. That was just like,
well, the Cincinnati Bengals also got accidentally bombed.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was watching with some Bengals fans, and they're just like, this is the Ravens game all over again. This just sucks. Like they're just not
hard
ready
to watch,
to compete with teams like that. Unfortunately.
Highlight from my weekend. I have to tell this story.
Oh, yeah,
I went on my first virtual date ever.
Oh,
it was
my God.
Absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
It was absolutely horrendous.
I could have told you that.
I will never do it again, but there is a highlight from it. I don't know why I agreed to it. I do it. I haven't done this yet. It could be a good story. And it turned out being one. We played 21 questions. She originally suggested that we watch a movie together and text about it. I'd rather die. So we pivot to 21 questions. Her first question. So I lead. I say like, why are you in the line of work you're in or whatever? She asks this long-winded answer. Her first question. It says, what is your rising sign? I don't even know what the hell that means.
Dude.
What? I was like,
chicks,
do you mean like a horoscope? I was like, I was born in May. I don't even know what freaking sign that is. She's like, no, your rising sign. Like, what time of the freaking day were you born? And I said, I have no idea. She's like, do you have your birth certificate? And I was like, no. Well, maybe your dad does. I'm not. What is going on right here? This is not what I want to get into. And the date just was completely derailed from then. It was a deal breaker.
One of my exes wanted to know the exact time I was born. I was like, I don't care. I'm just like, that's when I knew it. That's what I should have known, that it was not.
Dude, later in the date, I say something. She's like, oh, wow, you're a planner. I'm really into planners because I'm a Capricorn. I was like, no, you're high. I don't know what to tell you. Like, dude, if you think when you were born has any determination on your personality, you are in a bad place.
All right, I have a story as well. Okay. It's not as good as yours, but I went out. I got caught up in the Masters, so I decided to go out golfing Saturday morning. I was visiting my parents down in Orlando. And I go to this course, and they don't tell me that they haven't been able to cut the grass for 2 weeks. And so the fairways are like 3 inches long. On the second hole, I hit one straight down the pipe and I lose my ball in the fairway because the grass is so long. I just walked off the course. I'm like, I'm not about to play this. And I got a rain check. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing that they didn't even tell me that they couldn't cut the grass.
I have a confession. I've never golfed before, so I don't really understand the...
You don't even understand what that means?
I mean, 3 inches long sounds tall for golfing because it's supposed to be like really short, right?
Yes.
I've mini golfed before.
Like losing a ball in the fairway is one of the craziest things that's probably ever happened to me on a golf course. So.
Wow. Good for you. Well, sounds better than my freaking virtual date. I'll tell you that right now. Well, let's go ahead and get into the pod here. We had to give some backstory. Welcome producer Mike Quinn onto the podcast, Cincinnati Faithful here. I wanted to start with talking about some second-year players from this previous week. Daniel Jones had a good game. Jacoby Myers, the New England Patriots. Deontay Johnson put on a little bit of a show. The two Michigan edge defenders from the 2019 class, Chase Winovich and Rashawn Gary, both played well. I'm starting with this take, Mike, and I need your reactions. Don't look now. Daniel Jones of the New York Giants is the 11th graded passer and 11th graded overall quarterback, according to PFF. I am willing to comfortably say he's one of the most improved quarterbacks year over year from 2019 to 2020, and he's done enough in a very bad NFC East to avoid being usurped this offseason by someone getting drafted or adding someone in free agency. Because to start this season, I think there were some parts of me, or a lot of me, that was saying, oh, they're playing right into Justin Fields. Do the jersey swap of Justin Fields in a New York Giants jersey because they're well on their way. Now, of late, I think he's going to be the starting quarterback in 2021 and have another opportunity to improve on what he's already done to try and be the quarterback of the New York Giants.
So my take on that is it depends on where you are. If you're first, second, third, and you got a chance at a Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, you take that guy. Like
yes.
you go. That's a better prospect objectively than Daniel Jones was coming out, and you take that chance. Daniel Jones has not done enough for me to take that. But if you're in the middle of the first round and you're staring at maybe like Mac Jones, like I'll take Daniel Jones. Like that'll stick with him and let him develop. Maybe try a flyer on a guy later on because obviously you still want to address until you know you have that guy. But again, the conversation with me is more if you have a chance at an elite, true franchise quarterback type of prospect, you take that chance. Similar to kind of like the Washington football team last year. I guess they were technically the Redskins at the time, so I could say that. But the Washington football team during the draft. You should have taken that chance. Like they should have taken Justin Herbert, maybe Tua Tagovailoa in retrospect, given what we know now. So that's my take on it. I'm still not buying the Daniel Jones, whatever. Like I'm still worried about the high end. And I think that's with where we're at in the NFL. There's a lot of guys who can be the 11th to 25th graded quarterback in the NFL. Like there's this, like that tier of the Matt Staffords of the world, the Kirk Cousins of the world is massive. You can find guys like that. Like Jameis Winston's probably in that tier right now and he's a backup. You can find those guys, to me, that can operate that offense at the level Daniel Jones is operating that offense right now. It's the special guys that, like I said, the Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrences of the world, what they could be in the NFL that really move the needle. So that's how I feel about the Daniel Jones situation.
So I feel the same exact way that if they're drafting inside the top three or have an opportunity at one of those top three quarterbacks to do it, but they're not going to, there's a chance to win the NFC East. And then they go to the playoffs. So they're immediately drafting outside the top 16. And Daniel Jones is now playing for the New York Giants to a point where they're starting to consider, do they want to give him a second contract? Whether or not that just puts them in purgatory for the next 2 to 3 years is still up for debate. But one of the more improved quarterbacks and guy who's really earning his starting job in New York in 2021.
This was his first game, though, all season long, that he averaged over 7 yards per attempt. Just think about that.
He also has the rushing floor now. He's like he's running the football really well.
He can scoot. Like that guy, when he's out in the open field.
Dude, he's beating angles out there.
Yeah. So that is a legitimate value add to that offense. But I'm just saying, as a passer, I just worry about the high end with him. Like he's never shown the high end ever on a consistent basis.
I mean, the high end was that long run that he fell on the way. That was like probably the high end play for Daniel Jones. I'll bring up this as well before we jump from the second year players. I wanted to mention Chase Winovich is doing everything for Bill Belichick's defense. He's playing some off-ball linebacker. He's running on the edge in coverage, and he's playing really well. Very consistent against the run. Can win with speed. Can bend the edge on the corner. And I think he beat both the left and right tackles for the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday night multiple times as a pass rusher. Really impressive stuff. And we talked about Chase Winovich being, the better Michigan edge defender in that 2019 class. Rashawn Gary earned the highest single game PFF pass rushing grade of his young career, 7 total pressures against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still, you're not seeing a complex array of moves from Rashawn Gary. Bull rush Jawan Taylor twice, beat him to the edge as well, and same with Cam Robinson. It was comfortably his best game, an encouraging sign for the former first rounder.
Yeah, because that's what he has to do. Like, he has to be a bull rusher at the NFL level. He's just not flexible. Like, he's not going to win the edge. Kind of like Jadeveon Clowney in that regard, where Clowney, the amount of times he gets to the edge, and he was very limited over the course of a full season as an edge rusher. But his inside moves, his bull rush, like that level of explosiveness at that size is rare, and that can get you in a favorable position a lot of times. It's just developing the technique on the bull rush, being able to sink consistently into it, that he has yet to perfect. So it's a matter of time seeing him do it, albeit against, Jawan Taylor, who has struggled at times this year, is very encouraging. So I think that was easily his best game as a pro.
Another conversation I wanted to get into was the Jacoby Myers conversation. Some people, he's taken over in New England. His target share, I think, is over 30% over the past 3 weeks. He ridiculous. Is getting fed the football with Cam Newton there. And I think, and we talked about this before the podcast, the ideal slot receiver in the NFL is a very good true number one that plays in the slot because you have other good receivers. A guy that can run the slot wheel, run the slot fade, win with speed, threaten the defense, those types of things. I think that tier 2 slot receiver is the guy that maybe isn't super fast, isn't super quick, but very smart, very savvy, and gets open against off coverage and zone concepts. Because Jacoby Myers, a handful of times, had option routes in that game, and Cam Newton fed him the football to move the chains. He's a chain mover in that offense. I still don't think he's an elite separator. Even coming out of NC State, my NFL player comp was Jason Avant, a guy that was just never going to be an elite separator on the outside, but a guy who can work from the slot, catches every single thing thrown his way, even good in contested catch situations. I think they found a nice piece there. Maybe a replacement to Julian Edelman, who's now 34 years old. He'll never probably be what Julian Edelman was for this team, but a nice weapon to have in the slot. They still, however, need Damiere Byrd, N'Keal Harry, some guy with juice to step up and threaten downfield for this team.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think ideally nowadays you want some guy that's fast from the slot. Like, you want the Tyreek Hills of the world, the KJ Hamlers of the world. That's what the slot receiver should look like in your offense nowadays if you're really going to be an explosive offense. But again, if you don't have one of those, a guy that can get open consistently, and he's kind of Jacoby Myers, Tyler Johnson coming out, are those type of slot receivers where underneath route tree, intermediate route tree, you feel really good about them getting open. You feel good about their ball skills. You feel good about their catch radius. And I think that is kind of like you said, the tier 2 of slot receivers in the NFL.
I remember we've talked about this before, build your receiving core like a basketball team. I think that's the poor man's approach to building a receiving core. And if you want the poor man's approach to building a receiving core, an undrafted guy like Jacoby Myers out of NC State is how you do it. Because it can help you add weapons other places. All right. The other thing I wanted to get into before our Rolling Rooks, Raise the Glass blackout segments was rookie running backs in the NFL. So many were drafted in the first 3 rounds. We were surprised at the run that there were on the run on rookie running backs in the late first round, starting with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, then into the second round with DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, AJ Dillon for the Green Bay Packers. Who right now is the best rookie running back now 10 weeks into the NFL season? Who would you take first in hindsight?
So we had, obviously, I think, and the way we ranked them coming out was we had gosh, what am I blanking right here? We had DeAndre Swift, number 1. And I don't think I would change that after what I saw this past week. Like, he was excellent.
This is his first career start.
Really, actually,
after the bye,
finally
too,
got
right?
playing time. Finally, Adrian Peterson's finally on the downside of his career, apparently. They realized that and decided to get
they're running Adrian Peterson at an absurd rate to start this season.
Oh, I just can't even. People are like, you don't know shit. You don't work for a team. I'm not going to give Adrian Peterson 30 carries in the game also when he's 36 years old.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, DeAndre Swift, he looks good. Like, out in space, he's explosive. His cuts on a dime. Like, he'll break tackles without the guy ever even getting a tackle attempt in space because he's that, he's just that shifty or just that explosive out of his cuts. So I'd still lean with him. And then number 2, honestly, it's Antonio Gibson to me. Mm-hmm. I think his level of athleticism with his size and shiftiness and his receiving ability, that's number 2 for me. And that's to me, that's the crazy thing about, all these teams going with all these running backs early on in the draft. We had, 6-7 guys drafted in the first 3 rounds this year. And then all of a sudden, James Robinson's the most productive one, the UDFA. You can't really tell me there's that big of a difference right now between James Robinson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire in terms of their talent level. You just can't because James Robinson's been that good. He was that athletic coming out. Yes, he went to Illinois State. You just didn't see him in an offense that was anything like what you saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire at LSU. And even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you didn't see him in an offense the year before. He was unproductive the year before when you didn't see him in that favorable situation. So, I think this running back class, I had high hopes for it, but it's kind of fallen flat on its face. You got only a couple guys right now on pace for 1,000 yards, and one of them's, like I said, the UDFA and James Robinson.
Here's a take, too. Everyone said, well, if you're an offense that's a piece away, like a running back away, it makes sense. That argument is garbage. That is not a good
Jonathan
argument.
Taylor is looking great for the Colts, right?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even for the Kansas City Chiefs, I wouldn't even put inside the top 5, top 10 players that's making them one of the best teams in football, if not the best team in football. Like, they weren't one of those teams that was the exception to the rule that, like, well, since they are the Chiefs and they have everything, might as well take a running back at 32 overall. My take is that Antonio Gibson and DeAndre Swift, I think you're right to say that those are the two best coming out. And before we move off this conversation, why are they making J.D. McKissick a thing in Washington? Dude has 28 targets over the past 2 games. 28 targets over the past 2 games, which has led over to just a little over 100 yards.
That's Alex Smith, though.
But why isn't Antonio Gibson getting those touches? Why J.D. McKissick, 27 years old, out of Arkansas State, drafted in 2016? No, wasn't drafted. Undrafted free agent in 2016 is getting 28 targets in 2 games. You need to have a conversation. We need to self-scout a little bit. This is probably not a useful, because 28 targets, 2 games, like that's a decent amount of the plays you run. Like you only run what, like 60 offensive plays a game, maybe less. Like it's interesting to see how much they're using J.D. McKissick, but I don't think I take any of these running backs, as good as Gibson has been, as good as Swift has been, inside the first 2 rounds. If I redraft it doesn't make sense. When you see Mike Davis, DJ Dallas, James Robinson, these other guys that are having success in the NFL, it just again and again does not make sense to spend high draft capital on running backs.
All right, let's re-rank the top 5 right now, running backs that you would go. I think 1, DeAndre Swift. 2, Antonio Gibson. 3 at this point,
I really like Dobbins. Dobbins has looked good.
He was in the best situation to look good in terms of just like you're going to get space in that offense. I thought Cam Akers was the better prospect coming out. I think I'll leave Cam Akers there. Then probably Dobbins, and then probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like I was never that high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out. I think he's just good, not great. Like you can just, like I said, like James Robinson, you can't tell me there's a big difference between James Robinson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now. You can't tell me that.
That's the story of the situation. Like it does not make sense.
The one that really though, like I said, has fallen flat. Jonathan Taylor looks that should have been a good situation for him. You thought like that seemingly the stars aligned in terms of where he went with that offensive line and the scheme they run. The fact that he looks bad right out the gate, we already talked about this, but that one is the most concerning one to me.
All right, let's jump to our Rolling Rook segment here. NFL Week 10 is in the books. Number 1 from this past week, Tristan Wirfs.
Yes, Tristan Wirfs, again, excellent. No reason to move him outside of like the number 1 tackle spot in this rookie class. Like he just keeps getting it done week after week. Only 2 pressures on the day against Carolina. 89.8 run blocking grade. He had 1 base block against Brian Burns. They didn't go head-to-head a lot because it's just the way kind of it's set up there with a lot of tight ends on his side. But they went one-on-one one time, and he just took him like 3 yards off the line of scrimmage, mano a mano. That was a big mismatch. And Tristan Wirfs, man, he looks like he's one of the steals of the draft, even though he was pick 13. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous.
If you're redrafting in 2020 at the offensive tackle position, you are going Tristan Wirfs number 1 overall. I mean, not number 1 overall, but the first tackle off the board and sprinting the card in after what we've seen through 10 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you're redrafting. He might go 4th if you redraft in this year.
Yeah,
like he'd go top 5. I'm trying to think of who you would really take. Like if besides the quarterbacks, who are you taking over Tristan Wirfs in this rookie class? Chase Young probably still, but even then, that one's like kind of close because you know Tristan Wirfs is a dude right now.
Yeah, and talking to Tristan Wirfs too, and because I don't think we made enough of this, because he is this freakish athlete, and this guy was like literally breaking records at the combine, but. Dude had a really good head on his shoulders. Everyone raved about him coming out. Coaches loved him. Players loved him. He was a very smart kid, wanted to improve. Diet was very good. Like he was checking every single box.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was in the end why we had Tristan Wirfs behind Andrew Thomas and others? Or was Tristan Wirfs too? Tristan
Wirfs was 2. Mm-hmm. It was our second ranked tackle behind Andrew Thomas. Thomas just more agile. Mm-hmm. I thought was the biggest thing to me. Like Thomas himself was a somewhat freaky athlete. Like he had all the physical tools, kind of splitting hairs at that point. Thomas is obviously not developed technically whatsoever, but Wirfs and that power is really on another level than even anyone else. I mean, Mekhi Becton also, but like then just normal tackles translating from college to pro. You really see it game after game.
All right, Bravion Roy, number 2 here. Your guy out of Baylor, one of your sleepers in the 2020 draft, put on an absolute show this past week.
I had a crack up. So he blocked, I think, an extra point in this one, and he has 30 and 1/8 inch arms. Like he has tiny, like they don't bend even, like because his arms are so big.
He doesn't have elbows.
Looks like that wood pirate from Family Guy, where it just like sticks straight out his arm. And he blocks. He gets one hand up and blocked a kick. That one cracked me up. And he looks like a complete all around nose tackle that you'd want in the NFL. He's the 120th player on the board. Went in the 6th round because of that lack of arm length, but it really like doesn't show up. He almost chased down Leonard Fournette from behind in that game. He was flying, so he looks like
I think it was a good. He's a good compliment to Derek Brown.
Yeah, I think him and Derek Brown are going to be starters there for a while for them. I think that's going to be a good quality starting duo.
There was one block in the game where he was getting double teamed. You could tell like he was getting pushed off the ball a little bit. But in these one-on-one situations, even against the run or as a pass rusher, he was winning a lot this past week. I mean, he popped off the tape. And I thought with the short arms, you'd see it on the field. But this dude's a little bit of a hoss, man. Like he was in the middle there and very much looked apart. The NFL is not too big for Bravion Roy. Number 3 on Rolling Rooks this past week was the guy we already mentioned, DeAndre Swift. The hurdle was awesome. I thought, too, one of the bigger things I wrote in my notes for Swift this past week, varies his speeds very well. And he is very quick out of his breaks. I don't know what it was, but coming out of the bye, this guy, I mean, he looks like a much better player. And I'm not saying he wasn't good in the early weeks, but he ran with more confidence, varied the speeds really well, was forcing his tackles in the open field like we really haven't seen. I thought he set up the screen really well with the fake pass protection and rolled to the screen. Like he had a very, very good first NFL start for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, the fact that this was his first NFL start is just absurd to me.
Well, when you have Adrian Peterson, you have to run him into the ground. Like you have to get the last few carries you can.
And the thing that was the reason why he was number 1 on our board at running back, and he showed it in this one, the whip route against John Bostic looked like a wide receiver running a whip route. Like there was no sort of like jerkiness whatsoever. Yeah, and he scored a touchdown because he had the ability to run routes like a wide receiver, did it at Georgia. Now he's doing in the NFL, has not been utilized as such enough, in my humble opinion. But I think they're coming to their senses and they're winning some games now because of it.
Number 4 on the list is Jedrick Wills Jr., the left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, former Alabama prospect. Looked good in this game as well. He's been consistent. This offensive tackle class, we said, was very good. Tristan Wirfs has played well. Jedrick Wills has played well. Andrew Thomas has not played well. But even Mekhi Becton, when healthy, has played well. All right game this past week. But Jedrick Wills, another good game for him.
Yeah, Wills, second straight week without a pressure allowed. No, they didn't pass a ton. Weather was bad, and he was going up against some Houston Texans edge defenders that not the best competition, but he can only block who's in front of you. So he was, again, like he looks like he's hit the ground running in pass protection. The worry with me, though, dude has 8 penalties already. We may have heard through the grapevine on him coming out that he wasn't sharpest tool in the shed. That might be an issue with him. 8 penalties, little worrisome. That needs to get cleaned up at this point.
He'll clean that up. He'll clean it up. That's experience, man. I don't care if he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Neither am I. Okay, he's cleaning that up down the road. Number 5 on this list, Kyle Duggar. He showed up in this game, and it was a tough game to watch with the torrential downpour. And going against the Baltimore Ravens offense, you're going to have to play some creative concepts, and guys have to step up, specifically against the run. 5 defensive stops, 12 combined tackles. Looked very, very good against Baltimore.
Yeah, man. You see that. So his biggest thing was he had the highest vertical, longest broad jump, and the biggest wingspan of any DB.
He was built in a lap.
You just see him out in space, engulf ball carriers. Like he's such a good tackler on the season. 28 tackle attempts, 1 missed tackle. He's just so good out in space, wrapping guys up. You saw in this one 5 stops and just like that level of explosiveness. Took on a lead blocker in the box. I think he's honestly I think he should be a linebacker. Now, obviously, they use him as strong safety, and that defense basically utilized as a linebacker. But around the line of scrimmage, man, I'd be really excited about this guy if I'm a Pats fan.
You said that going into the draft, though, that Kyle Duggar playing in the box at the next level and kind of a linebacker role is the way to go. All right, let's pivot now to college football and raise a glass to some of the prospect performances from this past week. Kyle Trask has been one of the highest graded quarterbacks in college football over the past 2 or 3 weeks and turned in another really good performance in the Felipe Franks revenge game against Arkansas. It wasn't much of a revenge game. I mean, they dominated, but Kyle Trask, there was 2 throws that I had in my notes here. Let me scroll through these. The first one I'm sorry?
The point throw.
The point throw?
Or
Which one's that?
He had a seam route and he points to the corner and then he threw it to the corner.
I don't know if I
didn't
saw
see
that
one.
Maybe I didn't see that one. I saw the one on the flea flicker gets dropped. He scoops it up and just drops a dime deep down the field to the guy who's open. And then the other one was to Justin Shorter in the corner. That was a nice throw.
The drop flea flicker was sweet because he's falling away and he got it 50 yards in the air.
That is arm talent and a half. Dude that was one of the more absurd throws of the weekend.
Yeah. I think he's kind of gotten lost in the because God, what's his face? The name that I'm
Zach Wilson.
Out. Zach Wilson has been lighting it up. He's the darling of the class. But Kyle Trask, like that arm strength, his size is obviously gonna get some GMs a little tight in the pants.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah, and I think like this is the way he's playing right now. You'd be hard pressed to keep him out of the first round. Like he has that first round type of talent. Everyone and their mother wants that big arm.
I do. I definitely do. My mom does too, actually. But all you need is that miles per hour on the ball at combine, and everyone's gonna get a little bit excited. I'm starting to get interested. And also, I love and hate how much they try and run the football with him. He is not a super athletic quarterback, but he's a big dude. He's built pretty well there, and he bullied some kids in the run game a little bit against Arkansas. Next name on this list, some of my favorite tape of the weekend. I watched this front to back and back to front. My mom was watching with me as well. Elijah Vera Tucker versus Arizona. I put in my notes here, I am still looking for an Arizona defender interested in even testing this guy and trying to beat his block. He was dominating the first level, and at the second level put multiple people. He drove one dude out of the back of the end zone on like this run. I mean, he was in his bag playing left tackle for USC. Yes,
and so for me to say something nice about a USC player, you know he's got something. Yeah. Like he's going to be pretty damn good. This was the best tape maybe I've seen from an offensive lineman in college football all year. Mm-hmm. It was the level of dominance was just. He just didn't lose, man. The guy plays so under control, is now playing left tackle after playing left guard last season. Or was he right guard? He was playing guard last season. And honestly, like that was first round type tape. After 2 weeks, hasn't allowed single pressures, grading over 90. I think he's playing his way into the first round. And this dude was going to opt out too. He was an opt out. Coming back to school, is probably going to be a day 2 guy, maybe like a third rounder. I honestly think he's going to be a first rounder. He might end up as our top interior offensive lineman. If that's where, I think that's probably still where he ends up in the NFL level, but he's very damn good. And I can't believe he didn't start until last year. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, man. That tape, I like what you said there. Best college football offensive lineman tape you've seen all year in first round tape. That's for sure. All right. A third guy on the list, and we're going to bring in Quinn for this one, a Cincinnati alumnus, University of Cincinnati alumnus, Myjai Sanders, former 3-star recruit that is built. He looks like a power forward. Like his arms are really long. He's thinly built. Quinn, before we dive into the specifics here, Myjai Sanders, how excited are you for him in Cincinnati?
Yeah. So he's like obviously, like if you watched any Bearcats football, the defense is very, very good. Like at least Cincinnati, like one of the better defenses they've probably ever had. Maybe the best defense they've ever had. And he stands out on that defense. Like, so on a defense where they have like stars, like they got Sauce Gardner, they got James Wiggins, who's hurt now. I mean, they got like dudes that have like legit NFL talent and like legit playmaking. Kobe Bryant, I forgot about him. Like he stands out. That's I think that kind of sums up. I mean, obviously you guys like dive into more of the how that's going to translate to the next level. But like, if we're talking just, raise a glass to some college prospects, I mean, like it's kind of becoming like a week in, week out thing with him.
I mean, dude, I love when you turn on Group of 5 tape and you immediately know who you're looking for. You're like, oh, Myjai Sanders is grading well. I'm going to turn on his tape. Oh, shit, there he is. He's right there. He's got really long arms, really well built. I had to double check that he was a 3-star recruit because he really stands out on tape. 4 total pressures this past week against a very bad, let's remind everyone, a very bad East Carolina team. There were a handful of plays where he's playing inside against the guards and wins within a half second of the snap. And that's when you're just going against garbage competition. Myjai Sanders, though, I think a name to watch. He's got the size. I think he has some juice off the snap, length. Where are you with Myjai Sanders right now?
Yeah, so last year, 32 pressures, 82.8 pass rushing grade. This year already 30 pressures, 91.1 pass rushing grade. I think he's, gotten filled out in his frame. Like, you see him look more explosive this season than he did last season. I think he's a guy who's kind of only just scratching the surface, even though he's already been so productive with that grade. I think he's moving. He wasn't in our initial top 100 this year. I think he's moving up into that for sure. And there's been a lot of guys in this edge class, we've mentioned, athletes that are starting to kind of put it all together this season. And you need to see that before you want to feel comfortable drafting that guy. But I want to pivot this conversation about Cincinnati to how Mike feels about when Zach Wilson and BYU gets put as the fourth team in the playoff when they're both undefeated. How is that going to make you feel, Quinn?
I mean, it's like I hate to like say it out loud, like on the record now, but like I kind of have like just resigned myself to the fact like it's going to happen.
Cincinnati is far and away, in my opinion, the better football team than BYU. BYU has a good offensive line, great quarterback. If he went up against the Cincinnati defense, Cincinnati and Desmond Ridder would I think they would still roll him. Like, this is a very good football team in my eyes. I haven't watched them weekly.
You just brought the entire city of Cincinnati to their feet because they feel cheated. Quinn feels cheated. Everyone I talk to from Cincinnati feels cheated in the fact that BYU is getting more hype than Cincinnati.
Yeah, this is a damn good football team. But who do you think that?
Zach Wilson's going. But
that's why they're trying to make Desmond Ridder a thing, though, is because you need the name brand.
You do.
Like, that defense not going to be
I like Desmond
brand.
Ritter. He's a fun player.
Yeah, he's fun to watch, but he's
fun
not,
to watch. He's trash.
Fun fact, my aunt actually taught him at St. X.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Look at you.
So Ritter went to St. X. Nice.
Ritter went to St. X. I've mentioned this fact multiple times, but apparently he talks really good trash, which I feel like is a big for a quarterback position. Before we jump off the Raise the Glass segment, and before we jump off the group of five altogether, I got to bring this guy up. I can't believe we didn't add him to the podcast breakdown here. Zaven Collins, Tulsa linebacker, whereas number 23, I talk about, you turn on a group of five tape, you want to see the player instantly. Holy shit. This guy is huge. He's like 6'5", 260.
Yeah.
That's another one where you immediately jump. How did this guy end up at Tulsa? You go in, he's a former 3-star recruit. He's from a small town, Hominy, Oklahoma. Can you guess how many people live in this town?
You asked me this before the show, so I can. It's probably 3,200.
It's 3,400. You remember poorly. He's from a town of 3,400. He played quarterback and safety for his high school football team and the high school probably had 100 people or whatever. 50 touchdowns, over 6,000 yards, had over 100 tackles, 4 picks at this high school. Was recruited by no one, eventually got an offer from Tulsa, and is now really, really dominant. This is another guy that has legitimate size. He's a hoss, man. I like Zaven Collins moving up boards right now.
Yeah, so he's 6'4", 260, and he has a 92.6 coverage grade. He can fly, this guy. You watch his tape, and it's similar to kind of what I said about Kyle Duggar, where it's just his wingspan combined with his explosiveness, he just engulfs dudes. Guys go backwards. He does not. I don't have the stat for how many yards after contact per attempt when he's the guy that touches you, but it's 0. It's maybe negative. Guys go backwards when he hits you. This guy's a freak. And this linebacker class, pretty good class. He could eventually, I could see teams that are going to blitz their off-ball linebackers a lot, seeing this guy as a possible first rounder at this point.
My take too is he's just the best player on the field. You turn it on, and he's the best player on the field. Oh my God, he's the best player on the field. And the other thing too, I watched his high school tape before we got on the podcast. Dude's playing QB. He's got a cannon. He was firing it in there. His entire offensive line is 5 inches shorter and 100 fewer pounds than him, but he's just back there slinging it for Hominy, Oklahoma, or wherever high school he did play for. A fun player, absolutely insane to watch. Not fun to watch, insane to watch, because he really does stand out on tape. All right, before we jump to the biggest risers and followers on the followers on the big
UC
board.
Got lucky not to face Tulsa, or they got the makeup game now coming in December.
It'll be interesting
to go and watch.
We'll get to see a little Zaven Collins, little Desmond Ridder, James Wiggins if he's healthy, Myjai Sanders. Blackout segment this week. Give it to me. This guy, oh man, he's had a blackout year.
This guy's been on a bender, shall we say. Shane Lemieux, guard for the Giants. Now, 5th rounder, should not be forced in the starting lineup. Was 3 straight weeks now. His pass blocking grade, his first start was 12.1. Got a little better to a 20.8, and then had a little hiccup this past weekend against the Eagles to a 14.2, which gives him a 9.8 pass blocking grade for the season now in 3 starts for Shane Lemieux.
My God.
7 pressures this past week against the Eagles.
Fletcher Cox and company, give it to him.
Yeah, man. I I'm not one to write anyone off, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone go from this bad a start to their career to ever being like a serviceable player in the NFL. Like that's about as bad as I've seen.
All righty then. Let's take a short break before we jump into the let's take a short break before we jump into the biggest risers and fallers in the 2021 NFL Draft Board. All right, we're back. Biggest risers and fallers on the 2021 NFL Draft Board. You dropped this on PFF.com, I think a week ago or maybe even 2 weeks ago.
A few weeks ago.
Let's start
Draft board's always in flux.
It's always in flux. It's always, constantly moving. Yeah. Constantly. Let's start with your biggest risers here.
Biggest risers in the draft board. No one has risen bigger this season than Zach Wilson of BYU.
I mean, how could he? How could anyone rise higher than this guy? He has been like a legitimate rocket ship.
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable. So last season, 72.5 passing grade, was on had a big freshman year. That's not super indicative of who he was. Big freshman year, 78.8 passing grade that season when he started. Injuries last year, down year. This year, back in a big way. Not a single blip on the radar even to speak of. Has just been excellent. Game in, game out. Lowest graded game is 75.4 against Houston. This guy's and then you go to the tools aspect of it, where he obviously the accuracy, but arm strength on the move. Like he has a quick release. He has that modern sort of release where he doesn't need to have his feet under him. He can throw it from any platform, any angle, and get it to where it needs to go. And I think that's a tool or trait or whatever the hell you want to call it that I think is more valuable today than pretty much at any point in NFL history.
Firmly QB3 right now, right? Trey Lance is not to overtake him. He doesn't have an opportunity to do so. It's not going to be at the combine. It's not going to be at one of the all-star games. Zach Wilson, QB3. Do you think he ends up going in the top 5?
And I think he ends up QB3 in the actual draft. I just can't see how you see one game of a guy in Trey Lance it's going to be a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And maybe he's going to go to some showcase or have an extended pro day or whatever he has to prove himself. But you see one game of a guy and he goes 14-29, and you're going to take him over Zach Wilson. I think that's a tough sell when Wilson's playing as well as he is, and it's again haggling over high end traits. Mm-hmm. Wilson has more than enough to become whatever he wants to become in the NFL. That you can become the best quarterback in the NFL with his level of arm strength, accuracy, and mobility. That's just it's good enough. So I don't think at that point you'd need to go chasing a guy like Trey Lance.
Kyle Pitts is another.
Even though I'm still a fan of Trey Lance. I'm not going to hate on Trey Lance that much. Still a top 10. I'd still take him in the top 10.
Kyle Pitts, another massive mover up boards here. I mean, he started the season insane. People were he's got 7 touchdowns in 6 quarters. People were just stoked on Kyle Pitts, and all for the good reason. I mean, if you want a tight end in the NFL right now, it's got to be a Kyle Pitts type, a guy that can run it out wide, run it from the slot. He can do anything you want at the position, actually separate on a realistic vertical route tree that receivers run. He is the modern tight end that teams need.
He has a 95.3 receiving grade on the season, which is just absolutely absurd.
Because he's also good in addition to being able to create separation.
3.29 yards per route. Just again,
creating separation, yards after the catch, but his contested catchability is good too. He has good size, good hands, good body control for the position. I just don't have a lot of cons with him. Yeah,
he's just basically a massive wide receiver at this point. And I think his blocking's gotten a little better, so we'll see.
There you go. Kwity Paye, Michigan edge defender, is obviously blown up this offseason. We've talked about him a ton. What about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? Joker, baby, for Notre Dame. He has been another guy that's played really well. He's played in slot. He's played an off-ball linebacker. He's played some safety. He has been really, really good for Notre Dame's defense. The fastest defense in the NFL, as you've said multiple times. Yeah. Not the NFL, college football.
College football, they fucking fly around the ball. Him, Colin Hamilton, elite, top-tier, blue-chip prospects. No, yeah, Owusu-Koramoah had some hiccups last year. He was he's a guy who is, when he sees it, he's going to go for it, like that play against Clemson. When he said he just knew what that run was going to be, and he went for it. He had a lot of those last year in 2019 where he was not reading it right, where he was guessing the wrong play and was, going for it and getting exposed. That's basically gone this year. You've seen him take a massive next step. And his level of athleticism this past week again, I believe it was another seam route against a slot wide receiver as a pass breakup. Yeah, he had a step or two of separation on him, but that's a linebacker getting a pass breakup on a wide receiver down the football field. That just doesn't happen a lot at any level, especially college. So Yeah, he's a special dude. I'm going to throw Mike Jones Jr., the Clemson linebacker, in with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah because they're similar players. Yeah, 6 foot 220. They're both about the same size. He didn't play much 2019. They had that Tanner Muse, Isaiah Simmons. They had that safety rotation there. Also, Kayvon Wallace. So he's behind them. Comes in now and has been excellent for them. A very similar player. I think they missed him. I don't want to say more than Trevor Lawrence, but they missed him a lot in that Notre Dame game because he was out with, I forget what injury it was, but he is a very versatile NFL body type at the linebacker position and is very explosive player in his own right. So I think he's very much impressed me. And I think he's not a first rounder, but I think he's a day 2 type of linebacker at this point.
Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle for Virginia Tech, one of the highest graded players in all of college football, has been absolutely outstanding this year, specifically in pass protection. Also owns one of the best last names, I'd say, in college football.
Darrisaw's a cool name.
It's like, dude, that's a really sweet name. Like it sounds like the last name of like the main character in like an army video game that ends up like saving you in the end. I don't freaking know. I'm trying to get there though. You get what I'm saying.
He should just go by Darrisaw.
Yeah, he probably does. I don't think anyone calls him Chris. Okay, is it Darrisaw or it's nothing?
Yeah, Darrisaw's sweet, and he's also not allowed to pressure in his last 4 games. Like
that's
he is
insane.
Very good. I would not surprise me if he ends up as OT too, because it's really not much like. There's not a lot of knocks on this tape this season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has, again, that complete skill set that you want to see from a tackle you draft in top 10 to 15. So he might be the OT2 behind Sewell.
Man, that is high praise. Because, I mean, this isn't a bad offensive tackle class. Like, you got Liam Eichenberg, Brady Christensen for BYU. Like, there's some guys that are playing well right now at offensive tackle. I mean, hell, Elijah Vera Tucker, we talked about a little bit. He might play guard at the next level, but he's also playing well at tackle. That's interesting. Brenton Cox Jr., Florida edge defender, the transfer from Georgia, who has some juice off the edge. Really sweet spin. His best plays this year have been spin moves, and his spin moves are sick. And we've had this conversation before. Spin moves are a good telltale sign of like athleticism, juice, quickness. Brian Burns has a really good spin move. Other really good athletes in the NFL have good spin moves. But Brenton Cox Jr., another riser.
Yeah, he's a little bit on our size, but like if you're in the 250 range and his level of explosiveness, that's not undersized.
That's the number you need.
That's completely fine in my book. Obviously, only 319 snaps this year, still early on, and we only saw him as a freshman, 2018, transfer, whatever, 2019. 25 pressures through 6 games so far this season. To me, I like him more than Azeez Ojulari, who's getting a lot of hype for Georgia, who's a riser in his own right this season. But Brenton Cox Jr., I think, just a little bit more of a fan of the way he rushes the pass. I think he has a little bit more.
The way he wins.
Yeah. So
talk about a lot. We talk about the way and
we'll see if his off-field red flags get vetted though, and if he comes out this year.
Oh wait, there's some off-field red flags with Brenton Cox.
I mean, he had a marijuana possession at Georgia and then got kicked off the team. So.
Okay, interesting.
For undisclosed reasons.
I didn't know about that. We'll have to dive into the backgrounds. For those who don't know, I do all the background stuff for the NFL Draft Guide. So I dive in and double check these guys, make sure what do we got. That's how I found out the Zaven Collins stuff, diving into his background. He's got an absolute absurd story. I'd love to talk to him, get him on the podcast eventually. 2 more names we'll mention as risers, and then we'll drop a couple fallers as well. But Javonte Williams, the North Carolina running back, he is missing tackles or forcing his tackles at an absurd rate. Him and the other running back there, Michael Carter at UNC, both these guys are playing really, really good football.
He looks so much more explosive this year. That guy, he spent his quarantine in the weight room. This dude, Javonte Williams, 5'10", 220. Yeah, who didn't? Exactly. 95.1 rushing grade so far this season. Listen to this number. 120 carries, 62 broken tackles.
Stop. That's a typo.
Over a half. Like he's going to shatter the PFF record. This past week, 9 broken tackles on 13 carries. He is just.
I thought Etienne was going to have that record for a while, or the Georgia Tech kid from a couple of years ago. Like that. That's absurd.
Javonte Williams looks like. I mean, after Etienne, he looks maybe like second best running back in the country right now.
Man. All right, last guy I'll mention here is the North Texas receiver that we're hearing some rumblings. The NFL is interested in this kid, Jalen Darden, the wide receiver. He's got some juice, man. I like him. His tape is very, very good.
Yes. So he's, in my opinion, this year's version of Darnell Mooney. 689 yards in only 5 games. 200 yards his last 2 games. He's just very shifty, but also has speed. Like I think he is, like I said, Darnell Mooney-esque in that, yeah, he's small, but if you can't touch him, like that size disadvantage doesn't really matter that much in the NFL.
You should have waved your Darnell Mooney flag higher because you were big on him. You were high on him. You highlight him as a sleeper, I think, in a couple articles, but you weren't like putting a stamp on him by any means. But Mooney has looked really good for Chicago, can actually win on the outside. Yeah. That's the test as a small receiver. You talk about if you can't touch him. If you can win on the outside, beat press as an outside receiver, I don't care how small you are. Like, you can win in the NFL. All right, well, that's going to do it for the 2-for-1 Drafts Monday episode here. It was great to have Quinn involved. Always good to talk a little first date stories, too, at the top, getting in the biggest risers. It's getting close to draft season, man. It is going to be draft season. We move up to like 3 podcasts a week in draft season. If there's a Senior Bowl, we'll be there. If there's a Combine, we'll be there.
Will we?
I don't know if we will or
to that.
We'll see. We'll see if we'll make the play. It depends.
Well, I mean, will they let us?
Will they let us is probably a better situation. But we're probably up to 3 podcasts a week here, probably in January, and start getting really into draft season. So a lot of fun stuff. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Keep food on the table for Mike, Quinn, and myself. Until next time, Gayle, Mike Renner, 2-for-1 Drafts.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.